This month's podcasts are sponsored by Aubergine Legal. Do you sometimes worry that your business isn't meeting all its legal compliance requirements and wonder if you're ticking all the legal boxes? Are you losing sleep worrying about a piece of legislation that you may or may not be complying with? Perhaps you need some help with your client contracts or your data protection compliance. Or maybe you're worried that your website doesn't have the right documents or legal notices in the right place. Perhaps you have a brand that you want to protect with a trademark. How about if you could outsource it all and eliminate all of your worries? If so, then get in touch with Aubergine Legal, a friendly commercial legal consultancy offering practical and clear commercial legal advice without the overwhelming legal jargon, taking the worry away and helping you to protect your business and minimise your risks. Aubergine offers a free 30-minute consultation if you have any questions or want to find out if they can help, and you can access this link and book your free 30-minute call via the link in the show notes.
Welcome to the Bring Your Product Ideas to Life podcast. Practical advice and inspiration to help you create and sell your own physical products. Here's your host, Vicky Weinberg.
Today I'm talking to Cara Sayer from Snooze Shade. Cara is an inventor and an entrepreneur. She created her first product back in 2008. In 2014, she decided to sell her products on Amazon, and that was a real turning point for her business. Cara shares everything with us in this conversation, right from the really, really early days up until what she's doing with Snooze Shade right now. It's a fascinating conversation. Cara is really candid, really honest. We cover all kinds of topics. Specifically, we do talk a bit about selling on Amazon, so if that's what you're interested in, this will be a great episode for you. But regardless of where you are with your products business, I think you'll find this a really interesting conversation. So I'd love to introduce you to Cara. Just going to start recording.
You got it.
Okay, so I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourself, your business and your products, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. I'm Cara Sayer. I invented Snooze Shade, which is now the world's best-selling range of baby sun and sleep shade.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Cara. So can we talk a little bit about well, first of all, thank you for being here. And can we talk a little bit about the creation of Snooze Shade? So why and how it came about, and should we go right back to the early days?
Oh, yeah. Well, it is early days because my daughter is now 14 big years old and is nearly as tall as me. In fact, she keeps telling me she's taller, but I don't believe her. And I shall hang on to that like quarter of an inch that I've got on her for as long as I possibly can. But at the time I was pregnant with my daughter in 2007, and I had her at the end of October 2007. And I can't remember the exact timings, but I think so I was in a wheelchair when I was pregnant, so I couldn't walk. And when I got back out of the wheelchair and started walking again, it was around sort of January, February 2008. And so I was out and about all the time, and I used to do things like putting a blanket over the pram or my coat over the pram to keep her warm. I would then suffer because I'd either be freezing or the coat or blanket would fall off, and then you'd get mud all over it and the pram would roll over it, etc. And then the seasons changed, and so we were out and about, and it was sunny, and I wanted something to use to protect her from the sun, but I also wanted something to help her sleep, because sleep was very important. It's very important to me. I think probably genetically, I'm not sure she's my child now because she doesn't like to sleep as much as I do, but maybe that'll come later. So I wanted something to help her sleep as and when. So I remember, I think it must have been mid 2008. So she was, 6 months old, and had a group of friends with me. We all went out for lunch, and we all sat there, and everyone sort of fed their babies, and then everyone did the same thing. They put a pashmina over the pram, they put a blanket over the pram, they put whatever they could find, muslin, etc., over the pram, trying to encourage baby to go to sleep. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. Surely there must be a product out there that's like a blackout blind, but for the buggy, the pram, rather than the windows that we were all used to. And so I don't know why. It's really strange. Like, people always say to me, why did you do it? I really don't know why I did it. I just felt like it was sort of a calling, if you know what I mean. Or I was just really bored. I think my mum really bored because I'd had quite a sort of high-powered career before I had my daughter, and I was quite bored at home. And I think I sort of was looking for something to do that would be a hobby, Slightly bigger than a hobby now, obviously. Didn't realize that when I started. Anyway, so I sort of developed a prototype, which I now know would have been completely wrong. And then I found a manufacturer, and this is way back, like 2008, 2009, way before the days of all the help that you get nowadays with sort of setting up, e-commerce businesses, Amazon businesses, and all the rest of it. So I managed to find somebody who manufactured in China, and I actually still work with them now, 11 years on. And then I went to so basically I then dropped it, picked it back up, dropped it, picked it back up. And then there was a trade show that was happening at Excel in London, which was a baby products association show. And I thought, well, do I go on Dragon's Den, where I could get potentially laughed off TV, which could be embarrassing, or do I go somewhere like this show? And they had an area which was called the Innovation Zone, which was all about new products. And I thought, well, I'll meet people who might be a bit more useful in terms of meeting who would, because obviously in this day, remember, we are going back 10 plus years, and e-commerce wasn't where it is now. And it has changed a lot, even in the last 5 years. And so I just thought, well, that's where I'm going to meet retailers and see whether they think it's a good idea for a product, because if they think it's a good idea, then they're going to know more than I am, because I'm one mum, but they might know lots of parents and think, oh yeah, that would be something that would sell. So I went to this show, completely hysterical, went with my mum. I had a bird poo on my pram hood, which my mum spent a lot of time trying to get off. Actually, baby wipes are very lethal at getting everything off it, apparently, it seems. I don't know how we use them on babies' bottoms, but it also gets bird poo off pram hoods, just FYI. And I'm an ex-event organizer, so I'm used to putting on very professional displays. Forget that. I went super low key. It was all sort of A3 pieces of printed paper and whatever. So I'm very much a fan of just get on and do something, because if you sit there waiting for perfection, if I'd sat and waited for everything to be perfect, I hadn't even finished the prototype. I mean, I took the prototype with me and I was still sewing the straps on in the middle. And so I was showing people this product going, oh yes, no, lovely product, high quality. And then as I did that, one of the straps would ping off and I'd be like, oh, except for that strap, which I sewed on. So just ignore that, it goes into manufacture. And I got Jojo Maman Bebe signed up straight away, wanted a couple of 100 units, and I had a couple of other interested third retailers and people who said yes, and then I signed up John Lewis, and then I signed up Mother Care, and and it just kind of grew from there, really. And so I went off and ordered 10,000 units based on the fact that there'd never been a product like this before in the world, and I had no idea like what it was going to sell. But what I did was I just sort of looked at the numbers and I said, right, well, there's 750,000 babies born in the UK every year. I think it's gone down recently, actually, but that's what it was at the time. And I thought, well, even if I just sell to like 1%, like to 7,500 babies, then, surely I must be able to do that, even if I end up like, and my mum and I was like going, oh my God, I don't know, I'm investing. And then it was actually slightly cheaper if I ordered 10,000 units. So I don't know why I should have now I wouldn't do it, but at the time I was like, oh, well, if it's cheaper, I must buy more. So anyway, I bought this 10,000 units, and then I was walking up and down my corridor late at night, sweating and crying and all the rest of it, because I'd put all this money into a product that I didn't even know if it was going to sell. And then my mum was like, well, worst case scenario, darling, is that we'll just go and sell it at car boot sales. So I was like, oh, okay. And I think, that's the other thing, is sometimes we do get a little bit overwhelmed by what we're doing. And there is usually a backup plan somewhere. And okay, if I'd have sold them at car boot sales, I would still have probably made a bit of a profit, but not as much of one. And I probably wouldn't have lost all the money either. As it turns out, I sold the first 10,000 in about the first sort of, I only went on sale in March 2010. I think I'd sold out by about September. So, actually, as it turned out, 10,000 was a very sensible amount to order. But you live and you learn, and you learn these things, really.
Thank you so much for all of that. I've got so many follow-up questions. Okay, let's start with those initial 10,000. Did you sell those? Were they all to the retailers, or some of those you were selling?
Some of them are direct. Well? Some so what I also did, and this is what I also suggest people do, and I learned this actually from a friend of mine who runs a very successful baby business, and she told me this at a show. It was really interesting, actually. And I was at this trade show, not trade show, it was a baby show at the NEC in Birmingham, and I had a new product coming out. And she said, take the money now, right? Take the money, and then you can always refund it. She said, but if you don't take the money, and what I was doing is I was just asking people for their details, and then I'd let them know. But the problem is with people know, then they'll probably be too lazy, or they'll be, I don't need it now. Whereas if you get them at the time when they want to buy it, get their money off them. So I did that initially. What I did is my website went up in I think that's September 2009, and I had a waiting list for products for people, customers who wanted to buy it from me direct. And I think I had about 150 people or something, and I converted a lot of them. But obviously, remember, this is a very unique product at the time. But now, retrospectively, I'd say if you're going to launch, it's easier to take the money, keep it on one side. Please don't spend it. Like, that's what I would say. In the event that you need to refund it, don't go mental. But at the same time, it's much easier to keep people in the loop and let them know if they're like, even recently, obviously, with all the crap that's going on with like shipping left, right, and center, I've just had products where I've been out of stock for like 6 weeks, and I've had to fly products in and all sorts. And so therefore I do pre-orders. So people pay up front, and then I'm constantly communicating with them to say, okay, we've had another delay. But then I'm always as well ending that with, but if you want a refund right now, tell me, not a problem, we'll refund you immediately. So there's never any concern for the customer, from the customer, they're not going to get their money back somehow. And I think that's what most people worry about, is that, they pay for something, it doesn't arrive. And then actually they don't hear from anyone from the company for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, because yes, it's on pre-order, but people like to know that you're thinking about them. So I'm a big one about communicating with your customers. So I communicate a lot with my customers. In fact, I've just set up a whole like post-purchase customer journey for all my website customers. And I've got 4 websites around the world. They're very personalized. They're very much me, my personality as well. Lots of gifs, lots of cat gifs and friends gifs. But the thing is, people like it. I've even had one lady, it was so funny. She was waiting for a product, and because I wasn't very good at the technical stuff, I'd actually set this post-purchase thing off, and she was on pre-order, and she was like, oh my God, I just love all the messages. I've never seen anything like it before. It's great. And I was like, oh, thanks. But, really little things like that, people underestimate how important it is to kind of be in touch with your customer and sort of get on your customer's wavelength from where they're coming from, which is not about you selling to them, about why they should buy from you.
Yeah, and obviously your products solve a real problem as well. So I guess that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Coming back to those 10,000 orders, which I hope you don't mind, but that is a massively scary number.
It's a massively scary number, yeah.
I'll ask these 2 questions together because I think they might be linked. So what I'm interested to know, because I think people want to know this, and if you don't want to answer, do say as well, because that's fine. But how did you manage to fund 10,000 units? And did you have orders from retailers at that point, and had they sort of paid for any of those?
Well, I didn't have orders per se. I'd had interest, and I'd had Jojo Mum and Baby had placed an order, or told me they were going to place an order. I mean, they could have pulled out, and retailers do. But I think I had an order for a couple of hundred. And the reason I was able to fund it actually is not a good story in some ways, but I worked for an ex-friend of mine, and I was doing business development for her while I was pregnant, and she didn't pay me. And it took me like nearly 2 years to get the money out of her. And by the time, and actually because of the fact that she hadn't paid me, I was saving the money in a separate bank account to ensure that I got the full amount, because I kind of knew she might try and be a bit shady. And actually that's what funded, like, everything happens for a reason. That's what funded the first, I spent, I think it was at the time, it's about 30,000. So it was £30,000. And I put my own money in. It was my money, my savings. It was quite a big risk, I suppose, but I suppose not that I could afford to lose it, because obviously I couldn't necessarily, but I suppose my attitude was a bit different with that money, because I'd lived without it for several years. Do you know what I mean? Because of the fact that I'd had it owed to me, and I'd done the work, and then I hadn't been paid for it. So maybe had it been money I'd had for longer, I might have thought harder about it. But it just seemed a good idea at the time.
And clearly it pays off.
Well, it has done, in spades. But it's not something. I mean, I always hear about. I knew somebody. God, I mean, they were like remortgaging their house and doing all sorts of things to fund their business. And I'm always very nervous about things like that. I mean, I would never jeopardize my overall financial security in life in order to fund something like that. I mean, not that I could afford to lose the money, but if it had gone, it wouldn't have like destroyed me. So that was the difference. I think.
And it sounds also, like you say, your products at the time was really unique. You clearly had a lot of faith in your products, as did others. I mean, it sounded like at this trade show, you did remarkably well, considering you had a prototype that you've said wasn't, 100%.
Perfect.
So what is it you think that
it wasn't actually finished? I ended up adding extra details to it anyway. So I mean, it wasn't even, they didn't even sell it. It hadn't got any final packaging or anything. I mean, it was literally just this prototype with the pingy straps.
And what was it you think that sort of, you sounds like you did really well at that trade. So what do you think it was that attracted so many retailers? I mean, do you think it was you? Do you think it was the uniqueness of the product, a bit of everything?
I think it's a bit of everything. I mean, obviously, I know it's hard to believe. I think I have got quite a personality on me. I did actually win, I think it was the Nursery Industry Personality of the Year award in like 2011, I think, mainly because I just go around getting very drunk and messing around with people, I think. And no, I think what it is also I don't like selling. So I tend to chat to people, and I wasn't really, and also I think the other thing that was interesting is I always say this to people, if you're going with something new, don't sell, ask, right? Because I didn't try, I mean, I wasn't really so much interested in selling because I hadn't actually got a finished product. So I didn't feel like I could sell per se. And my objective of going to that show was research. And it was to find out whether or not, like, was it well priced? In fact, I mean, I actually ended up putting the price up after I attended that show because the original price that I was going to put it on at was actually too cheap. And people said, oh, it sounds, I didn't put it on at that price because I probably wouldn't have, I would still be in business, but I'd have put the price up. But, and that's the other thing. You can adjust prices just because of the fact that, something doesn't work. It doesn't mean you can't. I mean, I adjusted some of my prices this year. I adjusted some of my prices last year. I tend to be quite sort of slow, I tend to literally just go, right, I'm changing the price from this to this. And then that's it. And then I see if it really hits the product and whether or not it slows down sales. And if it doesn't slow down sales, then it's fine. And I do try and be practical. I mean, my main product, the bestseller that the range is known for, has stayed $19.99 since I launched. And I launched it in 2010. So it's been the same price for 11 years. Now, obviously, the costs of manufacturing that product have gone up. But I still feel that is a good price point for that product. I still make enough margin on it. And I'm quite happy with that, So, I think it's probably, and I've always sort of chatted and I'll stalk people. I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, there was a particular retailer I really wanted to get into, and I just used to chase him down the aisles at trade shows. I think he was quite scared of me at various points, and used to run away. But I got him in the end.
Persistence definitely pays off.
It can do. And I think as long as it's persistence with a smile,
yes.
And also be prepared to be rejected, be prepared to be turned away, and don't get nasty about it. I was like, okay, fine, no problem. I'm going to come back and I'm going to try you again, just be warned, so, because I said, I believe that my product is absolutely spot on for your customers. And I wouldn't be chasing you if I didn't believe that. So, I'm not doing it just to make a sale. I'm doing it because I genuinely think that it will add to the range of products that you offer. So I think having that passion behind what you're doing and that true belief rather than just doing it kind of for the money.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And also your product genuinely helps people. And I can say I had a Snooze Shade. So I know it was one of the best things I bought when my first child was born. And then I used it for my second child. It was probably one of the longest running items that I had because mine, they slept in the pram for quite a long time. And it is a product that solves a need because my children would not sleep in the pram unless it was completely dark and they had no stimulus coming from outside. So often this isn't a sale, this isn't an ad, but it does.
Feel free, off you go.
it really does solve a need. And I think if you've got that faith in your product that actually this is something that will be useful for people as opposed to just trying to sell it to make money. And obviously there's nothing wrong with trying to make money, but I think that's possibly the difference, is that you knew you had something that solved a need for customers.
I hoped it did. So in the early days, I didn't know that, you see. This is the thing, because I hoped it did. And I'd used it with my own daughter and I'd seen other people using them. And obviously we've got the most really fabulous reviews and all the rest of it. And, it is quite logical, which is that, when you have children and you take them out, and I've always said this, we take babies out and we expect them to sleep wherever they are. Well, if they're in a busy playground or in a restaurant, and, children also, babies particularly, get knocked out of sleep cycles by what they see, because they can't go into REM if they're stimulated, and it only takes like 3 seconds or something for them to be stimulated to a point where they can't go back to sleep. So what I do, and I always jokingly say this, but it's true, I bore babies to sleep because there's nothing interesting for them to look at. And it's not scary blackout either, but it is dark enough to help them go to sleep. But I didn't really know that. And I would say it probably took me a good few years to be genuinely confident. I'd probably say about 5 years, actually, to be kind of, and I think that's, I don't know whether it's a female thing. I think it might be. I think women are less in terms of being very bullish about, what this does and what this doesn't do. And I like to prove everything. So I like to test. I mean, I safety test to the extreme. I've done tests that nobody else would do, because I like to be able to say, well, I've tested it for that and I know it doesn't do it. Whereas some people would just be happy to sort of say, oh, well, it's passed general safety test. That's not good enough for me. Because, so I always sort of think, as I said, I always try and come from it from a sort of parent's perspective. What does the parent worry about? What does the parent want to know? But it has now, I would actually confidently say 100%, obviously no product suits every child because that's just not possible. No product suits every person. But I think I've sold enough of them now and got enough reviews to know that it does what it says on the tin. It helps them sleep. So, for me, that is really genuine. And every single time I get a message on Instagram or Facebook or a review on the website, review on Amazon, whatever, saying, this has been a game changer. It's a lifesaver. Can't believe I didn't know about this for my first child, blah, blah, blah. It honestly, I genuinely, every single time, I love it. I it's just so satisfying to think I've helped yet another person,
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to what you were saying about not being sure at the beginning that it works, did you do much testing in the early days in research, or did you try it out with family?
I didn't do the testing with the sleep, actually. I mean, obviously all the safety features have been tested.
Yeah, of course.
But no, I didn't really. I think about it. I mean, I really didn't, because I mean, I gave out samples for people to try and things like that, but I might have given out, say 20 samples or something, and then who knows, I might have just had 20 people who had good sleeping babies, but I think it was because of the logic behind it, if you know what I mean. I'm quite a logical person, and so, as I say, for me it was quite logical that it should work. So the biggest challenge was to get it to fit all prams and pushchairs. So I spent many a happy day in mother care, in my local mother care in Weybridge, where they thought they called me the mad shade lady, because I'd sort of come in and I'd have Holly with me, who was a little 2-3-year-old at the time. She'd be scooching around playing with all the toys, and I'd be standing there going, is it okay? And they're like, yeah. And then I'd just be like trying it on another buggy, trying it on another buggy, trying it on another. That was the thing I worried about more, was the fact that it wouldn't fit a buggy. And then I'd be like, right, it can't be universal fit. And I think that's the other thing you have to realize, a bit like what I said, there's no product fit that will suit everybody. There will be some buggies which not necessarily it won't fit, but people might not work it out that it does fit. And I get people even now going, oh, it didn't fit this buggy. I'm like, I know it fits that buggy. I fitted it on that buggy, but they, for whatever reason, haven't worked it out. So I still call it universal fit because it is, and I can make it fit most things,
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And we've talked a lot about the early stages of your business. Should we talk a little bit about the turning point? So why it came and what happened then? Sorry,
what do you mean? In what way? Turning point?
Was there a stage in your business where things changed?
Oh yeah. So in 2014, I was getting divorced. And I realized that, as much as I love my ex-husband, and I do very deeply, he's one of my best friends, I wasn't going to get a penny. So I had to either make Snooze Shade work very hard for me in order to be able to support me and my daughter, or go and get a job. Now, I'm probably pretty unemployable at this point, I think, really. So I thought, well, the business looked like superficially like it was doing very well. I was doing sort of mid 6 figures, but the profit margin wasn't brilliant. I mean, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't brilliant. And I certainly don't think I could have afforded to sort of actually genuinely live on it quite comfortably. So I started looking around at where I was losing money, and I was primarily, it was the old bricks and mortar distributor route. And because when you sell to a distributor, you have to give them a really, really massive margin, because they've then got to sell to a retailer who wants their 50% margin, and therefore you end up making like £1, on an item. So imagine if you want to make 100,000, you've got to sell 100,000 units. Well, when I sell on Amazon, say, for example, that same product, I might make £6. So therefore I can sell 6 times less units, but make the same amount of money, and having not had to buy all the other products that I would have had to in order to sell to Tesco and all the rest of it. So, and I saw these Facebook ads where apparently you could just sit on a beach, drink cocktails, and listen to the sound of Amazon loads of money. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. I'll have me some of that. And so I went to this conference. It was a 2-day conference in Heathrow in, I think, 2015. It was either 2014, I think it was early 2015. And what I realized was that a lot of Amazon sellers were not selling branded products, and they weren't selling products that were particularly different, actually. They were just, it was the typical garlic crusher, postural supports, and all the sort of things that we all joke about as being, the sort of the joke products sometimes in the Amazon world. And but I realized that actually the other thing with a brand is that brands sometimes get on their high horse a bit too much and think everyone knows them. And actually, for Nike, for example, people are looking for a trainer, right? And, for, Coca-Cola, they're looking for a cola drink, a fizzy cola drink. And so I sort of started thinking about it a little bit more, I suppose I say rationally and more practically, in terms of what are those keywords that are going to drive traffic. I also had to do a lot of quite painful stuff. So I had to get rid of my distributors. I had to part ways with them, even though I'd been working with them for many years. And I explained to them, I said, look, this is a situation. I either give up I either don't do this and I try and make more money, or I go out of business. So either way, you're not going to have the product. And then I started working on Amazon. I launched in the US and Canada and Australia. And I did all that in April 2016. And then I had to also, I was selling previously, my distributors and wholesalers had been selling to resellers. So I had to stop selling my own product for about 6 months. Because I had to wait till everyone to clear their stocks out and stop selling, because I had 37 resellers on the same product, for example, and the only thing that happens is the price just goes flying down. So I did that. That was hard and, cost money, cost sales, but it was a really sensible thing to do. And then I started working on all of the listings and all that sort of thing. I started learning PPC. I did all that myself to start with. I now outsource it. I have been outsourcing it now for about 3 years, I think. But the first few years I did it all myself, which was a major headache because I hate spreadsheets. Just started building. And it's just been growing every year ever since.
Oh, thank you for that. See, I know that you are in the same camp as me and believe that selling on Amazon is a really good opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about why you think it's such a great opportunity for brands? I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I would love to hear yours.
Well, I just think you're missing a trick. Because however much we may like to pretend that, we're a brand and everyone should be buying from us, etc., actually the customer may not want to buy from you. They don't necessarily want to have to hand their credit card details over to you. They don't want to have to worry about whether they get delivery tomorrow or in a week or whatever. And actually, I find as well that sometimes, even offering them a discount, they'd still rather go and pay full price at Amazon, but they'll get next day prime delivery. I do it myself. I think the thing is, you have to think like a shopper, not a seller. And you have to think about what's best for your customer. So, I mean, I have links to all my products on Amazon on my website, because if someone wants to buy them from Amazon, I might as well tell them where to go, make it easy for them. And I think also, I've got a friend of mine, I'm always banging on to her. She's got an amazing bag brand. And I know people are searching for that brand on Amazon because I can see it in the search terms. And I keep saying to her, and she does really, really well. She does 7 figures just off her website. And I'm like, you should definitely go on Amazon. She's like, oh, well, no, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but the thing is, you're not detracting from what you're going to do. Your customers are going to stay with you and you'll still be bringing new customers on. And I mean, I'm growing my website at the moment. I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute, because I'm not all about Amazon. But the most important thing is that you give the customer what they want, not what you want. And if a customer wants to buy it from Amazon, then they should be able to. And if you don't, then a lot of people who only shop on Amazon, and there are quite a lot of them, won't buy from you. So you're actually just missing out sales, in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think, and the other thing about Amazon is that people are there to shop. Whereas if they're on Google or Instagram,
they're looking around researching.
Where if they're on Instagram and your ad pops up, they might not be there to shop. They might be there to do a whole load of other things.
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I said the thing is also is that quite often, for example, I'll see a Facebook ad, right? So I've been working with a Facebook ad agency not for the first time. I've been ripped off many times, but this one is actually very good. And I've seen my sales, my website sales, my Amazon sales, everything has definitely gone up this year, really well. And I although I can't put a hard figure on it, my personal belief is that people do what I do. And what I do is I see a product on a Facebook ad, and then I go and see if I can get it on Amazon. because I don't want to deal with some Facebook random company that I don't know. And so and most of the time on Facebook ads, it's not a brand. It's like, it's a sort of, back scratcher or something, or, new makeup brush. And then you go to Amazon and there's like, 20 listings, which are all for the same product, because all the Facebook ad company is doing is basically pretending they're a brand when they're not really. And they're selling, I've been ripped off many times by Facebook ads, or not many times, a couple of times. But I sort of feel like, well, if I go and buy it from Amazon, at least I know what's going to happen. I'm not going to suddenly get hit by the fact that it's being shipped from China and I'm not going to get it for 3 weeks, So, there is that confidence in Amazon as a retailer that customers have. And especially, when you're a Prime customer, if it's on Prime, if it's available through FBA, you're going to get it tomorrow or even that evening sometimes.
Absolutely. And your credit card details are safe. You can return it if you want to. There's going to be no hassle there.
Yeah.
I think all of that makes a massive difference, because you're right. Putting your credit card details on the internet is quite scary.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't know what you're going to get or if you're going to get it.
Oh, if you're going to get it, exactly. Well, I've had both instances. I bought this robotic vacuum cleaner once, which when it arrived was supposed to be this all singing, all dancing, like floor vacuum cleaner, which all sort of plugged in automatically to the plug. And when it arrived, it was like a child's toy that took about 29 AA batteries. So fortunately, I managed to get my money back through my credit card. And then another time I bought this dress and they said, no problem with returns. I had to return it to China. And then they wanted to charge a 30% restocking fee, even though on their website they said there's no restocking fee. And so there's absolute crooks out there, frankly. So I think, I don't blame people for not necessarily wanting to go to some kind of semi-random website,
Although saying that, I do also believe that even if you sell on Amazon, as you do, it's also important to have a website.
Oh, it's vital. You must have your own website. And you see, I see a lot of I see millions of Amazon sellers who don't do that. And actually, they're making a big mistake, because the thing is also your customer wants to know you're real. And having a Gmail address on a website for a domain is pathetic, frankly, in my book. It costs virtually nothing to have a domain email address. And it makes you look more professional. It makes the customer feel more comfortable. If I see bloody blue at Gmail, I'm like, no, not doing that. Thank you very much. So, it's all about creating a look and a feel that makes the customer feel that they can potentially trust you and hand over their credit card details to you.
And you mentioned that you were doing some work on growing your website at the moment. So what are you doing there that you're happy to share? We're doing a lot of SEO work.
SEO work is not something that happens overnight. It's something that you need to work on with a plan. So I've got a very good agency who basically I've been working with them for about the last year. And we've been gradually growing it. And it's quite funny. The guy that I work with is lovely. And he keeps going, right, well, I'm going to aim to get you to here, in sales. And I'm like, oh, yeah, right, whatever. And then actually we've hit it already. Historically, my website was only doing like 50 or 60,000. I think we've done 140 this year. And that's a combination, I think, and that's just in the UK. And then I've got the US websites, Canada websites, Australia. So we're going to be working on each of those individually. And I think it's really important that you have that direct customer interface, because just as there are the customers who only want to buy on Amazon, there are also customers who actually prefer to buy direct from a brand. And so therefore you're giving customers a choice, which is what people want. They want to be able to choose where they buy from.
Thank you. And you touched on this a little bit earlier when you were talking about your email sequences. Now, I bought from you on Amazon, I have to be honest, for all the reasons that you've outlined. And I bought my Snooze Shade, that's where I bought it. But what's the experience like when people buy from you on your website? And do you have any tips or advice on how to make buying from you, from your brand, like a nice? Well,
I actually do it on Amazon as well now. So you probably bought from me far too long ago, because obviously things have changed now. So I use something called Helium 10. And there's quite a few of them, actually. There's quite a few providers out there. There's Managed by Stats, and there's Helium 10, and I used to use another one, Feedback Genius, I think, but I'm not sure if they're still around. I have automated sequences on Amazon as well. But I trigger at various points. So I do have, when someone buys from me, they get a follow-up email just to say, has everything arrived okay, etc. And I send them a link to instructions so that they can hopefully get use of the product. And then also if someone returns a product, I always send a message and I just say, why have you returned it? I don't get very many returns. And I get quite a high percentage of returns emails on that. And people explain, it's ever so sweet. They're always like, oh, hi, Cara. Well, I returned it because of such and such. Like, we went on holiday and we didn't end up using it. Or like, actually, I realized I've got the wrong one and therefore I went and ordered the other one. And so what that does is the ones who've obviously bought it and didn't need it, I reply and I say, oh, thank you ever so much for letting me know. That's really, really kind. And next time you go on holiday, do feel free to try and buy again. And if they've bought the wrong one and they're now happy with the one they've got, I'm like, oh, brilliant. That's amazing. Would you mind writing a review if you're happy with it? And, and then I also, what's the other? And then the other one is sometimes we get faults as well. Not very often, but we do. And then that's an opportunity to make an unhappy customer into a raving fan. So we bend over backwards for people who've had a faulty product, and they love it because, there's no quibbling. We just ask them to send a photo. I need like the washing label to get the batch number. It's send a photo of the fault. And then like, yep, we'll send you a new one. No problem. No quibbles, no messing, even when people have had it for several years, I'm like, okay, well, the strap shouldn't have broken actually. So, if they come to me, they've got like a 10-year-old one. I mean, I got sent one back the other day, actually, via Amazon. I think someone must have bought one off eBay or something, or bought it maybe like 10 years ago. And then the elastic is actually cracked. When elastic breaks and goes completely flat. And I think what they've done is they've bought a new version of my product and then sent back as a return the old one. And I was horrified, but people are sneaky. I mean, I do get people sending stuff back with baby sick on it and all sorts of things. And I get all the returns sent to me. So in the UK, so I don't get very many of them. So I inspect them all. And, sometimes you get baby sick or grass or cat hair and you're like, you've used this, you git, and then you've returned it. And I bet you've said it's faulty, just so you can get free postage. It's so, and then the post-purchase on the website is, again, I tell people what they're going to get. Like I say to them, look, you're going to get an email. It's going to have instructions. Then I'm going to check in that it's after it's shipped to make sure you've got it okay. Then I'm going to check everything's fine. And then I've got an extension on the warranty, which, to be fair, I don't actually need them to do it with my website because I've already got their details, but I do it because it's like a nice extra touch. And then we ask them for a review. So there's like it's a 5 email or 6 email process that goes on over about a month. It's only really, I suppose, at the end when we ask for a review. And even then, sometimes we've had it where when we've sent that email, people then go, oh, I've had a fault. And you're like, okay, great. Fantastic. Let's sort that out, So, I welcome people having issues, but coming to me or us. I've got a team, obviously. We sort it out for you rather than sitting there bitching about the fact you bought this product and it's broken after 31 days. And so Amazon won't take it back. Because that's the bad thing about Amazon, is that they have this stupid 30-day rule. Whereas I don't care. Like I said, if something breaks and it's like a couple of years down the line, I'll still replace it. Or at the very least, I'd give you a 50% discount off the next one you buy or something. I'd definitely do something. Whereas Amazon just goes, oh, no, sorry. And then you get a bad review because Amazon's basically messed up on the customer service.
Yeah, that definitely is one of the downsides. And I also don't think they take as much care as shipping as you would yourself either.
Do they take care in shipping? Honestly, I had some removals and they accidentally went to my house as opposed to going to the warehouse. And literally, it was like they'd taken a box that had been beaten within an inch of its life and then put a couple of teeny tiny little sellotape holders around it and then put like about 1,500 quid's worth of my stock. And actually some of them were missing because they'd fallen out. And the DPD guy actually apologized to me. He said, I'm ever so sorry. Like, that's what state it was in when I picked it up. I'm like, oh my God. So it's complained, obviously.
Good. While we're talking about sort of a bit of sort of negativity around products, I hope you don't mind me talking about this, but
when you're talking about what? Sorry,
you were talking about people sort of saying not as nice things about your products, it doesn't work.
Criticisms,
your criticisms. I'd love to talk a little bit about how you deal with any criticisms that come regarding your product. I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but I know recently you've had some, and I think you dealt with it really well. That isn't what she did, listener. That isn't what she did. I thought you dealt with it really well. So do you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I think
I get it all the time.
It can be your worst nightmare, I think, as someone who creates products, passionate about their products. I think when you get any criticism about it, you can really take it to heart, and it can be so hard. So can you talk a little bit about how you handle it and what advice you would give to others in that situation? Because I guarantee it will happen to all of us at some point.
So, I mean, the thing is also much more like defensive than you are further down the line. So, when you've only sold a few hundred or a few thousand units of something, you're like, oh my God, someone's criticizing it, might like close the business, blah, blah, blah. Whereas when you're selling like, 10s, 20s, 30,000 units or whatever, it's like one person's opinion. And that's why also I'm a big believer in, if you make any claims about your product, make sure you've got something that actually backs that up. So, one of the things that people didn't always get, remember, this was a product that looked very, very different from normal baby products. So normal baby products, pretty patterns, pale colors, pastels. Mine's black. Okay, it's black. And people don't really necessarily didn't like the idea of black. So I've had people calling it the baby burqa. I've had people, and also the problem is there's a perception about colors, which is that black attracts heat. And so obviously my product is a sunshade and a sleep aid. And people were going, well, if it's black, it's all going to heat up and the baby's going to cook to death and die. And so in the early days, that was actually very upsetting. And I knew for a fact that that isn't what happens. And I even so what I did was, because I'm not a scientist, I found it was actually the UK's leading thermophysicist, who I went and spoke to him about it. And I said, look, I was never very good at physics myself at school. I think I got 25% for writing my name, and that was about it. And I said, but, I know that my product doesn't overheat, but I don't really know why, and actually, what are the benefits, blah, blah, blah. So he actually wrote me a really nice letter where he actually explained the physics behind it and the fact that, this and that. And actually, fundamentally, even if it is like 40 degrees out there, it's still better to shade your baby from the direct sun than it is to leave them exposed. So even if it was to get a fractionally warmer, then it wouldn't matter anyway. But I think it was this year, I just about had enough. I think that's the thing. It's less about being defensive. You just get so fed up of hearing people being so uneducated, and actually in this instance it was an influencer, an Instagram influencer, who basically saw one of my Facebook ads and decided she didn't like the look of it. And then because there was a problem with Instagram and Facebook where there was an algorithm problem where what was happening was you would comment on something and then it would say it wasn't posting. But then what actually happened was I don't know if you noticed this, but it was a few months ago. It was whenever this thing kicked off. And it went on for about a good month afterwards. It was really annoying. Every time anyone posted on it, they would then post like 20 times. So you'd be sitting there deleting like 20 comments because you only want their one comment. So she thought that her negative comments were being blocked. So instead of actually approaching the business like Instagram, she then took to her stories and then basically said, I've seen this thing. It looks like a death trap and baby's going to boil to death. And it's like an oven and all this sort of stuff. And I just was like, do you know what? I am so sick and tired of this. And the problem was I didn't care necessarily about one person saying it, because I've had that happen a lot, but she had a lot of people who followed her, and they were then going onto my Instagram and then putting abusive comments onto my old posts on Instagram. Oh, this is going to kill babies, this is going to, all this negative stuff. And actually I've got a team of 3 people who help me on social media, all mums. And there was three or four of us, because I was doing it as well. And we're going in there and we're trying to get them answer. And then they're saying, oh, well, they haven't answered. They must be just like ignoring us sort of. And it was literally, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I went and I said to my team, right, I'm doing a video. I said, I've had enough of this. I said, I am sick and tired. So I just went, look, I design my products to be as safe, but my products are actually safer than probably about 95% of most of the big manufacturers' products, because I actually make my products safe enough to be safe enough for a newborn, which you don't have to do legally or for any reason. But I do it because for me, I sleep at night, and I'm a mum, and I would never forgive myself if a child was hurt using my products. And and I've always refused to do tests that are not scientific as well, because I will absolutely 100% test. So every claim I make on my product is tested. But there is no scientific test for whether or not a pram is going to overheat or not. It's just not possible. But there was all these like influencers out there sticking like thermometers into their prams and then shoving a blanket over the top and then going, oh my God, the pram's heated up to like 80 degrees and the baby's going to die. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is ridiculous. My product is nothing like a blanket. So anyway, I did this video and then and I actually did cry a bit, because I was just, when you just get so overwhelmed. So that got picked up and it went a bit viral. And then I also subsequently, I thought, do you know what? Sod it. I thought I'm gonna do what they do. I'm gonna stick a bloody thermometer in a pram, and I'm gonna and actually, as I said, because I've never ever said it keeps babies cool in the pram. It can't, because the pram heats up. There's all sorts of variants. But actually, it was about the same temperature under the shade. In fact, it was slightly cooler most of the time under the shade than it was outside in the sun. So I said, look, I've never said it keeps it. It's not an air conditioning unit, but it won't make your baby. It's not going to heat them up to like 80 degrees and they're all suddenly going to die when it's only 25 degrees outside. And so I've got those videos up now, and I do say in it, look, it's not a scientific test. I'm not using this to make a claim. This is literally like comparing apples with apples. If somebody's going to do a pram test and shove like a thermometer in a pram, that's what I've done, but I'm not making any claims based on it. So don't expect me to,
Yeah, thank you. And I think it was, I like the way you dealt with it, because it was very to the point, and yeah, it didn't escalate. And you got an apology in the end, didn't you, from that lady?
I did get an apology, yeah. And I mean, also what was actually really lovely was, because I had visibly got upset about it. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. But safety to me is is the number one feature of my products. So for someone to challenge the safety of them, I don't care if you don't like the look of them, because they're not fashion accessories. They help babies sleep. So if you want something that looks pretty, go elsewhere. Go and buy something else. But if you want something that works, then this is the product. I'm all about function over fashion. But actually, I ended up being deluged by amazing comments from customers who were like, well, I've used it in 40-degree heat and it was amazing. I've used it here. I've used, and they were just sticking up for me. And that, to be fair, was more valuable. And actually, that really kind of made me feel a lot more confident about in future saying to people, no, it doesn't make the bloody pram hot.
And it's
like,
great.
Read these comments. Don't ask me, ask the parents. Here are like 200 comments all saying that over the years they've used it in very hot climates and they're absolutely fine. And then you tell me that it makes the baby hot. Well, I'm not going to say anything,
I think it's great that you've built up that much loyalty as well, that your customers want to sort of stick up for you and for the product.
Yeah,
I think that's really good as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the time, Cara, because I want to be respectful of that. I've got just 2 more questions before we end, if that's okay.
Of course.
The first thing I would love to know is, if you were going right back, let's take yourself right back to the start. I was going to say, would you do anything differently if you were starting again today? And if so, what would that be?
Well, if I was starting today, I wouldn't. If I was going back 10 years, you probably wouldn't do things that much different. There are a few things I would do. I mean, I did some mad stuff, like, I went to things like Oscar ceremonies in America, and like went to and did gifting suites in the States. And I spent money on sponsorship campaigns in the US, way before I was ready and way before I had distribution over there, which, if I'm honest now, I probably wouldn't do. But having said that, it was an experience, If I was starting afresh now, I would 100% start on Amazon and my own website. I wouldn't bother with the other retailers. I might have a few. I mean, I still sell to Jojo Mama Bebe, who are the first retailer I ever worked with. But I pulled out of everywhere, like, because I've left my distributor. I don't sell, like I was selling to Tesco and Boots and everywhere else. And I just think that, depending on your product and depending on, what I ended up doing is, in the end, for example, Tesco kept putting their price down. And I'm like, well, I know what price you're buying it at, so how can you afford to have it down that low? And then Amazon, because I was selling to Vendor Central, which I then also stopped, they would then match what Tesco were doing. And I'm like, why are you doing that? It's stupid. Like, both of you are losing money on this product. And things like that. Whereas now that I've got more control over where it's sold, I don't have problems like that. Because actually, for me, it's not about the price per se. It's about the perceived value of the product. My products are not cheap to make. They are high quality, but I try and price them so that they are competitively priced. I don't want to, I don't want them to be stupidly expensive. So I do try, like I say, I've still kept the initial product that I started with is still $19.99. But that price, my cost of product has probably almost doubled, since I started. I think it's really, really important that, that there's a perceived value to that, I still get people complaining, oh, it's too expensive. I'm like, right, well, you try and go off and make a product like mine to the quality level and the safety standards that I do. and then you knock yourself out and try and do it for $19.99. You know, I mean, every company that's ever copied me, and I've been copied by Aldi, Lidl, I've been copied by other people other pram manufacturers, I've been copied by, you know, random Amazon sellers. You know, none of them ever produce a product that is the same quality. They're always cheaper and they're always nastier. And, you know, and I'm like, good, because it just shows to me, it just proves to me that what I'm doing is right, which is I'm spending more because I make less money on some of my products because of the fact I choose to invest in the pricing as a strategy to get people through the door. And then I've got more expensive products and and all the rest of it. And I've got some products that make more margin than others and all the rest of it. But, you know, fundamentally, there is an element where I don't want my brand to be devalued. I don't want it being sold for £14, you know, somewhere when, you know, I wouldn't sell it on my website for £14. So, you know, why on earth would it be sold somewhere else?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I also believe that, you know, given sort of the amount of time and effort and everything that you've put into your products, I don't think anyone ever could compete with you on quality and price.
Yeah, and I mean, I've spent I've just spent £6,500 on safety testing. I can't even really talk about, because of the fact that it's not an official safety test, but it is a safety test that is really important. So I've actually just had the products tested for carbon monoxide dioxide rebreathing and also for suffocation. Now, there is actually no official test for that, but I've worked with one of the world's leading independent laboratories, and they do have that test that they use for other bigger brands. And I've managed to get hold of someone and I've managed to get my products tested. That cost me $6,500 or something, you know, and who's going to spend $6,500 normally on a £20 product, like to safety test? But I can now say, well, I know it doesn't affect, it won't do, you can't rebreathe, and I know you can't suffocate, you know. So, you know, for me, that's my sanity, you know, and that's my sort of, you know, why I sleep at night, because I know that and all the copies will have not had any of the tests that I've had, you know, that I've done, and they won't be using the zip qualities I use. They don't use the only baby safe certified poppers in the world. You know, all of these little details are what makes up the bigger picture, which is why, you know, even if you're not selling a product like mine, there are ways of making your product stand out from other people's by just doing something that shows that you care. You know, go that extra step. So, for example, I bought a couple of T-shirts on Amazon, basically same T-shirt pretty much, just slightly different patterns. And one seller sent it to me. It was all crumpled up and it was just in a plastic bag. And the other one had actually wrapped it up in tissue paper, you know, like you get in a shop with a little sticker on it, like a little branded sticker. Well, guess which one I'm going to get? They were the same price, but somebody had basically just said, oh, here, I'm going to like sell you a cheapish T-shirt, shove it in a plastic bag and send it to you. And one had thought, well, actually, I'm going to make it look quite nice. So it's a bit of an experience opening it. It shows someone's cared. You know, so even little tiny touches like that, you know, packaging is something particularly that, you know, it costs extra, yes, but like if you're only ever looking at your margins, you're not really looking at your business in the right way, in my opinion, if you want to create some kind of quality brand. If you're just selling down and dirty cheap for the cheapest price, do what you like. But if you're trying to build something that has a little bit more longevity, then think about ways in which you can make yourself stand out. And some of those ways are, you know, could be donating to charity with every purchase. It could be, you know, making it wrapped up nicely. It could, you know, so it's making it packaged so it's a ready to go gift, you know, all those sorts of things. Because people do notice.
They do, and I think there's a lot to be said for being thoughtful. And what I really like as well, Cara, that I'm really taking from this conversation is, despite the fact you've been doing this for well over 10 years now, you're still refining and improving.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, you don't need to be doing these extra tests. You probably don't need to be fiddling with your website. I say, I use fiddling, you know what I mean? That's not enhancing is the best word. You know what I mean, though? All these things that you're doing, I just think it's really nice that despite you being very established, you're still always looking to improve not just the products but the experience as well. And I just think that's really admirable, actually.
And the other thing I would also say, which is reassuring to people who are starting up, you don't have to do it all straight away. So, for example, in my previous life, I was in marketing, PR, etc., and I used to do some consulting, which was one of the things I did for the person who never paid me. And or she did pay me eventually. But anyway, one of the first things I would always walk into any business, whether it's a B2B or B2C, I would say, are you doing a newsletter to your customers? You know, because obviously that's a really good way of like communicating and upselling other products and giving discounts and encouraging people to buy. Anyway, over the last sort of 11 years, I've probably done in total about 20 newsletters to customers. But you know what? My business has still continued. I haven't had a lovely post-purchase email follow-up in the last sort of 11, 12 years. I've sort of flitted in and out of Facebook ads, so I think the thing is that what I would say to people is focus on one thing, do it well, then move on to the next thing. Because if you try and do all of it at the same time, or even focus on 2 or 3 things, or if you've got a team of people, but don't try and do everything, and don't worry if you can't do everything, because if you start doing well and you're not doing all those things, imagine how well you could be doing if you actually then started focusing and putting a bit of energy, and that could be next year or the year after. It doesn't all have to be now.
That's brilliant advice, thank you. And I think that is really reassuring. So on the other side of what I was saying about how you're still doing these things now, it's nice to know that some of these things you weren't doing, it's not like you've always been doing all of these things. I think that is really good for people to hear.
I mean, I've grown. I mean, this year we've done 48% increase year on year in the US, in the UK and the US. And on my website, I'm up 134%, I think it is. And in the US, I'm up again. I can't remember what the percentage is off the top of my head, but that's really quite significant growth. And that is growth that's taken, and that's obviously taking into consideration we've had COVID. I mean, COVID knocked me a cropper briefly, but you see, again, I think because I was such an established brand by that point, although yes, it wasn't great for anyone, and no, I didn't make as much money like in 2020 as I did in 2019, I still kept going. I mean, at one point I was sitting there with a piece of paper and a pencil, working out if I sold 2 units of this and 3 units of that in this country and that country, like, could I keep the business going? Could I pay my team? Blah, blah, blah. And then actually it all just kicked off again, and it all just carried on, and it was fine. And I did well last year. But the thing is that, you've got to always be flexible. You've got to, I mean, if COVID's taught us nothing, it's taught us like how things change. I've always been a massive fan of FBA, but when COVID hit, I suddenly had to do FBM, because I did FBM using MFN, which is the manufacturer fulfill. No, I did it using the what's it called, multi-channel fulfillment, where I got Amazon to fulfill my orders on Amazon. Because, which is really stressful, because actually I couldn't do it now because Amazon doesn't give you the shipping details before they ship. So whereas now they want you to put the shipping details in. So what I was sitting there doing was I'm typing in like all these customer details into Amazon to ship the product. Then as soon as they've shipped it, then I'm getting the tracking details, putting it into Amazon to pass on to the customer. Honestly, I mean, but all of these things you've just got to learn how to do. And it actually has also opened me up to doing more FBM, because it's good, because again, not everyone has Prime. And actually, you can, and sometimes you go out of stock. So it's good to have backup and, all of those things.
Yeah, definitely. And for anyone who doesn't know, so FBM is when you fulfill your own orders on Amazon. And like you, Cara,
merchant.
Yes, I recommend you do both as well, because as you say, if you go out of stock, it's just, or your stock takes ages to get unloaded when it gets to Amazon, as it can in the run up to Christmas. It's good to have. I'm aware I've kept you for quite a long time now, Cara, so I have one final question, if that's okay, which is, what would your number one piece of advice be for someone looking to start a products business right now?
Oh, don't do it. I think I would say, just make sure you're really clear on your USP, which is your unique selling point. And like I say, that isn't necessarily the unique selling point of the product. It could be the unique selling point of the customer service experience. It could be the unique selling point of how you deliver it and package it. It could be the unique selling point of the fact that, you sell a tea brand and you donate to, elephant sanctuaries in India, whatever it might be, but find something. So I'd say there's that one, find something unique. And the other thing I would say as well is, the Amazon world is full of a lot of people. It's quite funny whenever I go to Amazon events, because it's full of people who are selling 7-8 figures or whatever. And if you say to them, what do you do? They're like, oh, I'm in the baby category, or I'm in the pets category. And I'm like, oh no, I do Snooze Shade. And they're like, what? Sorry. Because it's all very secretive and no one likes to share what they do. And I'm like, I don't care, because I consider myself a brand. I just happen to use Amazon as a sales channel. But I would say that, one of my top tips is, if you're not afraid of putting your face out there, is, add a bit of personality to your listings on Amazon and to your website. Make it about the real you, or, give customers a story, because they like stories. They like to be given a reason why they should support you over some other faceless entity. And, if you go to any of my listings, and you're welcome to, I do them all. They're not particularly brilliantly done, but again, doesn't have to be perfect, just has to work. And, you'll see there's pictures of me on there, pictures of my daughter. I talk about the fact that it's invented by a mum, because that is actually a very important part of the story. And Amazon particularly, and the internet, is quite a faceless, personality-less place. So the more you can do to make people actually care about why they should buy from you, the better, I think, really.
Thank you so much. That I completely agree with you. When I'm working with clients on Amazon listings, one thing that I'm always trying to do is put a bit of personality into it, because as you say, there are so many, you'll get 20 listings for the same thing, but the ones that stand out to me as a customer are the ones that are a bit different. And whether that's because it's got someone's face on it, or whether it's because the language they use, there's something a lot more appealing when you realize this isn't the same t-shirt as the other 20 or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for everything you've shared today. I've loved talking to you. I think, you've given us a lot. Thank you.
I want you all go away and make notes and then tell me you've done lots of things.
Well, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed it, please do leave me a review. That really helps other people to find this podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and do tell your friends about it too if you think that they also might enjoy it. You can find me at vickyweinberg.com. There you'll find link to all of my social channels. You'll find lots more information, all of the past podcast episodes, and lots of free resources too. So again, that's weinberg.com. Take care, have a good week, and see you next time. If you've been inspired to start a podcast in 2024, I really recommend my podcast host, Captivate. Captivate were my top pick when I started podcasting 4 years ago, because of how easy it was for a complete novice like me to get started. I've stuck with them for the last 4 years because Captivate is still really simple to use. They keep adding great new features, like the ability to share ads like these, and they've just been really reliable. So when you're ready to start your own podcast, you can use the link in the show notes and get a free 7-day trial with Captivate.